Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Mystic Raven Tarot YouTube channel. I'm so excited to have my favoriteest astrologer here, Anjani. Her IG handle is at Venus Gemstone. She is one of my favorite astrologers because I have never seen somebody take astrology to the depths that she does with transforming the self. And as a lot of you guys know, one of my biggest pet peeves with astrology is when people are using it as a tool of fear. And they put all these crazy memes online that make you feel like you need to put a tinfoil hat on and hide in the closet. Now, I used to be girls for sure. Because when certain transits would happen, especially I have this really love-hate relationship with Uranus because it is the most extreme, abrupt changes to my life, and I dread them. But then afterwards, there's always something really beneficial. And what I have learned so much is to roll with it and go with the flow because the planets are actually not against me, they're for me. And I almost kind of look at our birth charts like it's this pre-planned map that we chose when we came here, and when the planets transit around the chart, it activates those little things that we had pre-planned that are going to elevate our soul. So when something major happens, I tell myself, okay, like when Mercury retrogrades, right? And even lately I've been saying I hate it when it's in Scorpio and Pisces retrograding. It's the scariest to me because stuff comes out of nowhere. You never know where your feet are going to hit the floor. It's as scary as hell. But I have Anjani now, and her descriptions of what the planets are asking you to do are just so vast and deep into the soul. And when I start to fear myself a little bit because my life seems very shaky, I always go to her page and I'm like, okay, what is she saying about this? And there's always so much comfort in her words because when I read them, I realize, oh, this is what the universe is asking from me. And if I take some time to reintegrate and integrate the new lessons, I will actually be way more elevated. So thank you for that, Anjani.
Yeah. Yeah. When you said Uranus, I had to look at your chart because that's one of the planets that's really a prime thing today because how did that go? I think in the sky today. Oh, I forgot. I forgot, but it's either I think it's maybe the sun. Anyway, it's active force for today. And I wrote about it in the astrology for this morning on Instagram. And this morning I was also kind of tuning into Uranus because of, I don't know if you are aware, but Nikola Tesla is my boyfriend. And he's my so with all of the planets, I like to get something in our physical reality, whatever it might be, and have it as the spokesperson for that planet. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So Nikola Tesla is like the spokesperson for Uranus. That is radical change agent, way ahead of his time and fucking everything up. You know, but like Prometheus stealing fire from the gods. It's that same kind of energy that is for humanity to shift into something that it's never done before. It's never been before. So on your chart, Uranus is in a square relationship with Mars. So whenever you say like, oh, you know, then it makes me just wonder like, well, I wonder, you know, what that could be about. And in my chart, Uranus is in the 7th house and it's in perfect opposition to my ascendant. So it was, you know, it's a major thing for me, which is probably why I love Nikola Tesla. He's like my 7th house.
Yeah. Partner, like.
You know? Yeah, and every person that ever comes into my life is somebody that I feel like I love them. It's usually they have that same thing before we started the recording that you were talking about, which is that that when you don't put a label on something, that it's very individual
Mm-hmm.
and you can't quite confine it. So it's unique, it's strange, even the word weird, you can use the word weird with Uranus. It's the unknown, and it's like an shifting the assemblage point. So it's shaking up what is normal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that you brought in Uranus. Uranus, Uranus, whatever way people say it.
Yeah. Yep. So, do you want to talk a little bit? Well, let's talk a little bit first just about Mercury retrograde, just because that's what we're in right now. And it's in Scorpio, so like, Scorpio is that real like secret. It's like a mystic. Like I think the Scorpio is like the mystic of all mystics. It's like the quiet nun who levitates in her room when no one's looking. Like that's what like I think about. Like, like Saint Teresa of Avila. That's what she used to do. And actually she's one of my favorite mystics because they used to she used to the stories go that she used to take the body of Christ and levitate. And since she was making a scene, they would stop giving her the Eucharist. And she like something like crazy. Oh, she was like crying in the back of the church because she couldn't get the Eucharist, and like one went flying from the priest to her. Like that's one of the stories, and I think that that's just such like a magical like. I'm so out into the cosmos with the love of my God that like all things will come to me no matter what. Like that's, and so it's also very secretive and taboo. So like she was like kept away because like we can't let society know that she's doing this. It will be like a freak show. So like when I feel like when Mercury's retrograding in here, it like really brings all your own inner freak shows out, or like things that are really hidden in your life that you don't like either the public to see or you don't like to look at yourself, or things that you don't know that was going on in your life. All of a sudden it's like boom, and it's like
Oh my
sun you can see.
gosh. Yes. For people who are comfortable with Scorpio, I feel like this Mercury retrograde is so amazing. So amazing because it is like we're comfortable with those taboos. Like we
Yeah.
got on this call and instantly go straight to the most taboo topics, and it's not awkward.
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot of people, because the Scorpio mysteries have been suppressed, and I go back and forth in my mind about this, like they are called the mysteries and they are the occult. And my mind goes to like, well, for some reason at a certain period of time, those things were hidden, and by their very nature, they are what's in the dark. It is, I think about my compost pile a lot because if I were to bring my compost pile to the light, it won't decompose properly. You know what I mean? It needs to be covered. I put a cardboard box on it and keep it damp and dark. And that's how it does its best work. So
I love
that's
that.
you know what I mean? Like going back and forth. Well, like how much can we bring the by their nature they're hidden. So I'm very comfortable with that. I'm very comfortable lifting up the compost and there's all these like creepy crawly things in there and it's not a big thing for me. And I put my menstrual blood and urine, and it's not, to me, it's just normal. But to other people, they're just like, ew, what? But I think it's because of, grooming, what's proper and what's right. And if you're brought up in a household where there's a certain way that things are supposed to be, and like I was brought up in that household too, like I think we all were.
Yeah.
At some level, at some level, it's like for whatever reason, those things have been hidden and okay. So anyway, for people who aren't comfortable with that, when these things start coming up and maybe being around somebody like you or somebody like me and having like, when we get together with somebody who's not very comfortable with running around naked in their house or and then you're around them and you're just like, get all like, you get all triggery and weird, like, oh my God, stop, you know, um, then it could be a great opportunity to like question, like, okay, you don't even have to ask, why do I feel this way? It's sort of just like, letting your body do what it's doing. Like, oh my God, there's a naked person, and oh my God, I'm freaking out. And before you start saying all the things like, I'm freaking out, I can't believe that person's naked, and look at that. So you start telling all these long stories. Before you do that, there's a visceral thing happening. So then if you can just be with the visceral thing and be like, oh wow, there's so much energy moving, that and that person that is doing whatever that weird thing is, weird, um is like really a messenger, like Mercury. They are that messenger to awaken this energy within you. That be with that, be not,
Yeah.
the story. Maybe you don't have to let the story be the thing that you're connecting with. Let it be here in the body,
Right. Like Mercury would like literally rule stories. So it's like literally by it like going backwards, it's like, why don't you stop that story? And then Scorpio's like that deep emotional like
Mm.
secrecy. So it's like just feel it for a minute. Like that's what I've been going through since like the hour it happened. It's like the hour, like so much happened within the first 2 hours of Mercury retrograding. I was like, this is fucking unreal. And I almost want to run to the closet. But instead, I was like, okay, I'm not going to label any of this. I'm going to trust it is all for the best. That's the first thing I did. This is all going to work out for my highest good because I planned this before I even incarnated. So I'm like, all right, everything's good there. My spirit's got my back with everything, so I'm not going to worry. Now I'm just going to feel what I'm feeling and tell myself through all of it, it's okay to feel this way. And as soon as I tell myself, like, it's okay to feel the way you feel, it's like there's not so much anxiety attached to any of the emotions because I'm allowing myself to have the emotion rather than trying to stifle it away. And I think that's a big deal.
It is a big deal because what you just said is that you're allowing yourself to have that emotion, and when it's I think of it like one of my teachers in Hawaii um, talks about emotions in the body as the ocean, and it's waving. So the waves are coming and going, and then when your mind is like, oh, this wave reminds me of that thing, and that feels like this, and then you grab mentally, and then when that happened last time, this other thing happened, therefore, and you're all on this wave of like a mental wave.
Story. That's a story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But whenever you can just be like letting your body do the waves, you know what I like to do? Um, and I think since last year, I've been doing this a lot more, which is being around somebody who I feel physically attracted to, and then letting all of that like attraction and like desire and like it's just like so blissful, like all these things happening in my body, and then I don't act on it.
Oh
I'm
my
not I'm not taking an action from that. You know what I mean?
God.
I'm just like I'm just breathing with it, and my body is like, it feels like unlocking all these little secret compartments in myself that haven't been able to get unlocked, because normally when I would feel those feelings of attraction and arousal, like I would feel them and then I would need to do something, and then that ends the conversation in my body,
You know what? That's actually something really major because that feeling of that energy right there, that sacral chakra, sexual, creative bliss energy, as soon as you act on it and release it from the body, it's gone.
right?
So I think the part of sexual mastery even is like getting those feelings, but then not letting them escape out of the body, because that's where some hardcore work can happen. And like there's even so like when I'm working magic, there's a certain amount of arousal that needs to take place inside the body and kept in your body, especially
Mm.
ladies watching this. Like if you get into your feels and in your body and touch yourself and rub on yourself and get all that energy built up and then go write your book that you're trying to write or go paint or go make jewelry, whatever it is that you do for creation, that energy is going to come out through you like that, but it's like building up in the body rather than you giving it to another person. And there's something
Yeah.
about putting it in you and utilizing it for your own creative abilities. And it doesn't, there's times where, yeah, you do give it to someone else and there should be like an exchange there. But you also start, when you start doing that, you start getting a certain level of respect for your energy. Because when you see, my sexual energy just created that work of art. Now, when someone comes along, you ain't gonna be jumping on that D real quick. I'll tell you that, because you are gonna be like, I ain't giving this artwork away like that easy. So like,
Exactly. You know what? In the last 2 years, that has been something that this morning, because this is Scorpio's realm, this sacral chakra, like this arousal energy that builds things, that idea, that energy, what you're saying about it, being able to channel that into your art, writing or making things, or making herbal concoctions, or whatever it is we're doing with that. That is our life force energy. I learned yesterday that libido, from Freud's work, libido was actually him describing life force energy. So that was really like a kind of a striking moment for me to see that. And then for the last 2 years, I have been like not actually really engaging sexually with people. It's been like cuddling and other things. And this morning I was like, I don't know, like I feel like what you said, it's just so precious. I don't really want to just use it that way anymore, unless we're building something together.
yeah.
And we're sharing that and circulating that together toward our collaborative projects or something like that. I don't really find it so attractive to just share that.
It's not like, I think, and see, this is so Scorpio. Now we're just talking about sex. So like, so like, yeah, no, let's look under that cardboard of the compost pile that Mercury retrograde having us do, and bring out taboo topics. So like, sexual energy is used for co-creation. It's used for making another human. It's used for, like, when you come together with another being and share sexual energy, something should be co-created out of that, whether it's a project or it's whatever it, even if it's just to enhance the love between the two of you. It needs to, there's this thing where, like, I think a lot of people are in this still high school version of sex, which is like goal oriented sex, where it's like we have sex for the orgasm, not for the experience of everything that leads up. The orgasm is actually the end, the creative end result. It's the finished painting of all the co-creating you just did while conjoining together. So like, it should be this process that's just like ecstatic and very not like, oh, I'm exhausted after because I just taxed out all my energy. If anything, I think you should feel more revitalized, because you just you're exchanging energy and like creating something out of it. And I think that if people started valuing their, seeing what they could even make first you got to see what your sexual energy can produce, like with just yourself, like as far as like creating things with it, then you start actually valuing it, and then it becomes a whole different level of like how you can co-create with another being doing that and where they're at in understanding sex.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so I just wanted to look at, I'm going to tell you mine first, but Mercury is happening on my in the seventh house, the Mercury retrograde, and it's going right over my natal Uranus. So, and that, like I mentioned in the beginning, is in opposition to my ascendant. So during the Mercury retrograde, people can also look at what part of their life this is taking place in. So for me, it is in my seventh house, and it has to do with my weird secret love for weird people and weird things that are just like, you know what I mean? Like, I get so off on like, get in, I want to know I want to experience your mind. And that, to me, Oh my God, especially when there's depth in there and we travel, like we literally travel and make new bridges between you and me. And there's like this place for all these other things to be built. So it gets really far out for me anyway, seventh house, Uranus. So the material that was coming up in the shadow phase of Mercury retrograde let me know, like I could start to see what was coming up. So one of my the last ex that I have, which is the, you know, the biggest thing in my relationship, like I will call it a kind of an obstacle in my relationship material. I start talking with his best friend secretly. And, you know, somebody's watching this. Maybe it won't be a secret. Maybe we don't know which best friend it is. Maybe there's a few of his best friends, okay? And feeling like he's very Nikola Tesla in my reality bubble. And I'm like having this like ongoing deep love affair and like intimacy and cuddling and all of this kind of stuff with this being. So I saw that start to build up during the shadow phase, and then Mercury goes retrograde and it's like getting more and more intense. And so it's all in my seventh house, you know, in this area of my life. And so working with it is like, to me, I still don't know what, you know, because Mercury retrograde, like you don't know what's going to come up or how to deal with it. But the way I kind of work the retrograde with Mercury is knowing that I don't know, and knowing that nobody knows. Like nobody freaking knows. Like sometimes I'll get like, oh, well, they're better at this than me. So then I'll put all the chips on them and be like trusting them a little too much to deal with the information. But actually, they don't know either. They're in a retrograde also in some area of their life, you know? It's good to know. I can look at the person's chart and be like, oh, this is where their mind is going into. And so like in the early morning, we wake up, I'm thinking about this thing and it's retrograding for me. But for this other person, they start talking about a business and work. And it's like going on his south node and his Saturn. And he instantly, you know what I mean? So I'm like, I'm able to have that foresight and be able to see like, oh, this is what's ruminating and what he's remembering. It's about this topic. So
when I was like checking out like where Mercury was retrograding for me and all of that, so like it's in my 12th house, right? So
yeah.
Conscious ethers. But then I also look at where Mercury would rule in my chart. So it's also my 7th house and then my 10th house. So Virgo and Gemini. So I was like, okay, so my partnerships and like business stuff is really going to come up for my assessment. And then the 12th house is so mysterious. So I'm like, I'm not going to be able to pin any of this. It could be past life shit. It could be subconscious views I have about myself, about others, about topics I don't even know, that like are belief systems I have that I'm like, this is going to give me a run for my money. And it's happening in Scorpio season. I'm like, there's going to be a lot. And there's going to be a lot that comes up. And right in the shadow period, it started. And then like right when it retrograded, I mean, whoop, that cardboard lifted off the compost pile for sure. I was like, oh, fuck, here it comes.
How do you do it? How do you, in your mind, how are you like, because every single time it's a new thought that comes up that you're like, oh, like, how do you meet those things in your reality?
So right now, right now, I'm like actually facing a lot of my fears. So that I guess would be 12th house. I'm facing a lot of fears. And I really just like, I paid attention to everything I've been working on these past 6 months. And what it's come down to is literally standing up for who I am, not letting down my boundaries, and not changing myself for anybody, even if it makes them uncomfortable. Because I ruffle feathers. Uranus in the 1st house. I ruffle people's feathers. I trigger them. And it's like, so when the first situation happened, I was like, I know what this is, and I'm not going to change who I am because this person's being triggered by me. And that was in the pre-shadow. And when Mercury retrograded, it happened with someone really close to me, the same exact situation. It's currently like we're in that right now. And I just know that at the end of this, it's all going to be for the best. And I keep going back to the fact that I'm walking in my power right now. And even if everything's falling around, like apart around me, it doesn't matter because I still have me and I'm not going to compromise me. And at this time, when everything falls apart, I'm not going to lose myself. I have me. And so that's just like, and that's for me personally because of what's been going on in my life. So I think that's what's keeping me most stable is because like, and it's what's, and what I'm noticing, the more I step into that like peacock confidence, I'll call it, of just like keeping my tail feathers up and just staying me. Every time a situation has come up so far where there's the opportunity for me to back down and put my tail away, I don't do it. And then immediately after that, a door opens. And it's like at the same time, it's like me almost in this like testing ground. And the universe is like, yup, you learned, here's a new thing. Here's a better thing. It's like I'm leveling up every day because I'm keeping my tail feathers up.
I love that you said the tail feather thing because of your sun and Mercury in Leo. And I often will use the imagery of a peacock when I'm talking about Leo because it is like comes into the room and it's not even trying to do anything, but it's there and everybody notices it. You can't hide that, you know? So that's cool.
I actually got that. I was in the woods one day and I was having like a really rough day and I was talking to actually a fern plant that I found and it had these dots on it, looked like braille, and I was talking to it and I was running my fingers across it and I was like asking it like, how do I get through this time period of my life right now, like what am I supposed to be learning? And I didn't get it right away and I got in the car and I started driving home and it was clear as day in my ears, like loud, like it wasn't like in my head, it was like audible, and I just heard be a peacock. And something to me because I actually for the longest time didn't resonate with my Leo sun sign, and after deconstructing that I actually like figured out why and everything. But from that moment when I heard that be a peacock, I was like, oh yeah, no, this is my time, like I need to just like be who I am and like fuck it. And then everything started.
Hey, I'm wondering what I want to know about that process with your sun sign because I also have Pisces sun and I didn't resonate with it. Pretty much my whole life is why I kept studying astrology since I learned how to read because I didn't resonate with it, but I also had a deconstructing of that. So I don't know if you want to just like kind of let me know what that was about.
Well, I think with a lot of people, what I've come to find out by like doing chart readings, a lot of people once they find out their ascendant are like, oh, I resonate with my ascendant way more. And I think it's because we act in our ascendant so much. And I think as we mature and grow, you grow into your sun sign. Like as if like, because like when I read for people who are older, you can tell they're very in their sun sign. And then the younger people, like pre-Saturn return age or in their Saturn return and less, it's like they seem to be more in their ascendant. So sometimes I wonder if it's a thing of maturity sometimes where like you go through all these different things and it moves you more into your identity, because that's like the sun is the identity where the ascendant is like, oh, I'm acting like or something, like that's how I kind of look at it. So I think of course with like other aspects, so like my sun my like Leoness was like suppressed and just because of things that happened throughout my life. So it's like I kind of taught, oh, don't be like that, that's bad. So I like hid it away, like don't be the center of attention, don't be whatever. But it's like I'm like trying to be, it just fucking happens, I can't control it. So then it was like all of a sudden it's like, oh well, you can't be so outspoken, like you're gonna hurt people's feelings and you can't talk about that topic, or you can't. A lot of it has to do with talking because I have sun conjunct Mercury exact, so it's like I'm always want to talk about everything and I don't care, like if it offends you, ask why it's triggering you. Like, you know, I'm not mean to people, but like I like to talk about everything, so and bring things to people's attention. So I don't know, I just started like when I started stepping out more and just like, stopped caring, I guess that's when I really started like understanding the the Leo-ness more. And I think that for me, I like to give people and topics who don't have a voice. And that's what I've always, and when I think back to my childhood, I always did that. I always wanted to speak for the ones who were like never talking, or I felt were like picked on, or people ganging up on them. I always wanted to be their voice. And then as I got older, I always wanted to talk about topics no one wanted to talk about.
Sometimes I think Leo gets the word narcissist put on it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Leo, because of everything you just said. And so it's one of the signs that I also feel like I want to stand up for, because especially for when you're like a little girl being brought up, it's not like, oh, look at how exuberant and loud she is. That's not like one of the things that we were like, yay, look at my exuberant, loud, like peacock of a child.
Mm-hmm.
And Scorpio, that's another one, like people often get a lot of shit for.
Yep.
What other signs? I mean, those are the two signs that are coming up right now. And then there's like this whole thing about gender, like if you're a boy with a Pisces moon or, you know, Cancer moon, that there's certain ways of being that little boy will be that aren't necessarily getting applauded. They're not being really fully, you know, I was born in 1979, and I think this is changing a lot now for people who are having kids, that they're being so cool with their little boy wanting to get their nails painted, or, you know, just letting people flower into what they are flowering into, instead of trying to like mold them into what we think that they should be. But when I was little, that was not a thing. You know, when I was little, it was like very much that we were supposed to be a certain way, and being in that certain way would not really allow you, like that whole thing with the label, once you become, oh, I'm a hippie, or I'm a whatever, you get into these little groups of what I am, then suddenly that negates everything else, and you're, you know, just put into this little thing. Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Scorpio Pluto, just because somebody did mention that, like they wanted to hear our opinion. And I would like to start off by saying that I love those energies because, and it's not the same thing, you know, the 8th house, Scorpio, Pluto, it's a similar thing, but it's not the same. So that the house is like the area of life that the mystery will be unfolding in. So 8th house being like our, the place that we, I call it, after you've gone through the first 7 houses, and the 7th house being where we relate, where we get into collaboration with each other. And then the 8th house being where, you know, you go into death and rebirth. I talked about holding the guts of your friend while they're going through birth or going through death, and being able to be that person who will really be there with you during your composting time, whatever that might look like. And it's not a very comfortable place, but as you may know, I'm sure that when your 8th house material comes up, there'll be somebody there that you're surprised. And the people that you thought would be there aren't, you know, a lot of times like that death, the birth of a child, or whatever kind of really intense situation that you might go through, that's 8th house material. It's not a comfortable thing for everybody, and nor should it be. Like, some people are just going to be naturally better at other areas of life. And then Pluto, I have Pluto square to my moon. So it's something that all the time, every single day, is a feeling for me. It's a very deep, visceral feeling that brings this like depth to everything I think, everything I feel. It's it's deep, you know? And before knowing that, before like, oh, somebody has to point these things out, because, you know, like, you can look at your astrology chart all the time and not really notice a certain thing until somebody like mentions it. And then you're like, oh yeah. And then starting to talk about that, like, oh, Pluto being like, in the story, my favorite Pluto.
All right, so we had to break up the video a little bit because we started getting bad connection, as you guys could see from my end. So let's start where we left off, where we were talking about Pluto. And I think that this is a really good topic because Pluto is like the death planet, right? And I think it depends. Some people say Mars rules Scorpio, some say Pluto, right? I kind of lean towards Pluto. All my Scorpio, either like moon or sun sign people, they don't seem very Mars-like. Because like I have an Aries moon that's like conjunct Mars, so I'm very like like do things quick and aggressively, and I don't find my Scorpio people like that. They're more like in the shadows and like looking for the best move, and that's very Plutonian to me. Like,
yeah. So I really like having, I don't put them together like that. Like, I don't put together Pluto with Mars. I don't feel that way. I feel like Mars is our assertive nature. It's hot, it's active. And Pluto is that part of us. I think of Pluto in my body as my womb, my pelvic energy, where, you know, that's a place that we're going to lose the blood. We're going to give birth to the child. We're going to poop. We're going to pee. That's like the Pluto part of my body, where the feeling that you get before any of those things happen, all the bodily things that are associated with those movements of energy in our pelvic floor, that to me feels very Plutonian. So for me, Pluto, I think of intensity. I do think of Scorpio when I'm getting into Pluto mode. I do think Scorpio, and but it's like at another octave. It would be like where Scorpios were born. It would be the environment Scorpio was bred in, or something like that. It would be Scorpio's land, you know. I guess just a way of referencing the Pluto vibe. And I personally, when I think of going into Pluto vibe or Pluto land or whatever you want to call it, I think of personal power and real deep vulnerability, intimacy, like being able to be naked, psychologically naked, like not holding up any shield of clothing on our psyche or our soul, and really bearing it all in real vulnerability, you know. Because if I don't know how your giving birth situation was, but if you were giving birth in front of people, like, you have to really be able, you go to Pluto land during birth. You know what I mean? You really become Pluto in a sense. Your version of it. That's the other thing. We all have our own version of Pluto. Like, where does Pluto live in your body? Where, and in your chart, you can see, like we mentioned on the little not being recorded time, that you have Pluto square the sun, and I have Pluto square my moon. So for the square to the moon, it would be like in my sense of who I am, the moon, that I might not really show to everybody. It's like the inner, the sum total of my moods, as Stephen Forrest talks about the moon, the sum total of my moods over the course of my life. And that the inner workings that happen in my dream life and in my emotional set point kind of thing. Pluto is there all the time. Like, I always feel this draw toward depth, and it can seem like melancholy at times. It can seem very, to me, I don't feel depressed or anything like that, but I'll notice when I start talking sometimes, or like writing, that it is like Pluto really comes through, and it draws you into this like deep place. So, and then for you having it squared the sun, my imagination of that would be like if mine is on the inside and it's not something that you can necessarily see, but you maybe can see it energetically, like vibrationally, when you're with me or you're around me, you might feel that draw. But with you, my imagination would be like that it's the way the sun is, you know, like look at you. You know what I mean? There is a Pluto, there is like this it's not hidden. Yours is like on the outside, like the way the sun is. That this person is working with that Plutonian energy. You know what else is interesting? The time frame when Pluto, the planet, was discovered was only 10 years before plutonium was created. And the times in life whenever these planets are observed, like once a human was able to observe that planet, we discovered it. There's like a certain thing that happens in our humanity that relates. It's like in resonant not polarity, but it's in resonance with that planet, you know? Mm-hmm. So that really tells a lot. Like I got chills everywhere because whenever I do research, you know, I'll just type in the date or the year that Pluto was discovered and look on like Wikipedia, and they'll just kind of give you a little bam of everything that happened during that time. And it is very Pluto-like drawing you down into who am I without my name? Who am I without my stuff? When something that is so dear to you gets taken away, what do you do? And who do you go to? How do you move in the world? So Pluto will be square on, everybody's going to get this initiation at some point. Like you and me, we have it as a regular part of day-to-day life. We are working Pluto. We're working with Pluto. But everyone's going to get a Pluto square. So I had my Pluto square when I think I was 37, 38. And when that lines up, there's going to be 3 hits. On the day that Pluto became into perfect square on my chart, it was like that day, the exact day. And some stuff happened. My best friend guy that, you know, part of I can't even describe how much I love this person, but ends up going to jail and in solitary confinement. One of my children was doing some things that could take his own life. Then there was like 5 things that all were Pluto in nature that happened each time I had a hit of, and I'm not saying these things to be like, oh God, when Pluto comes, it's gonna.
So I was just gonna ask, like, so I used to do the thing where like, oh God, the Chiron square is gonna happen in a couple weeks. Like I used to get these like, oh Jesus Christ, like I wish I still believed in the rapture so I can be beamed up. Like I wanted like, you know, escapism. But then like so when you see like, okay, so this is gonna happen, like you right? And then things start happening. How do you integrate that and deal with that? Because I think this is what people need to know. The planet's asking you to do something to evolve your soul through all of these tribulations, especially Pluto.
Especially I'm going into
fears, because while Mercury was just retrograding, on the day like it retrograded, the sun hit my natal Pluto, which squared my natal sun. So it was like, bow, in your fucking face. Like, you know, and I'm just like, oh, well, I got to face my biggest fear right now, and I'm going to do it. Like,
okay, so whenever you find out you're pregnant and you know that you're going to be having a baby, you know that there's this process going. You're not going to be able to sleep, and you're going to have this and that, and then there's going to be the moment when your cervix is going to dilate and you're going to split into 2, and you know that's going to happen. So since you know that, you're able to go through that process knowing that this is going to be some shit. Like this is going to be hard. I'm going to shit myself in front of everybody. Like all sorts of things are going to happen, and you don't even really know what's going to happen. That's the real kicker. Is like, you know that you know the environment, you're going into Pluto land, you know that, but you don't know exactly what's going to happen. So it's not like a test you can prepare for. So to me, the thing is, like, when I knew that I was coming I know that. I know that at between 36 and 40, you're going to have Pluto square Pluto. You're going to have that. So knowing that, it's like, all right, I'm gonna get down into it. And when I was in it, and there was 5 things, I named 2 of them. There was 5 things that all of them were really freaking hard. Really, really hard. And every day I still went to work, and I was just like, when the thing hits, you get the call, you get the news, you got to go visit your friend in solitary confinement, or see your kid in a hospital, or like go, whatever the things are, you got to go and be there fully for the moments, and bring all of yourself to your spine. You know what I mean? Breathing all of yourself into your spine, looking at the situation with every bit of awareness that you have in your body coming out through your eyes, and using your words to be as clear and precise as you can with what you're feeling inside yourself. So this is intimacy with your environment. You're sharing intimately, like really the depth of what's happening. And then when that is over, you're okay, now I'm leaving from the jail, and I'm like, okay, we're done here. Now I'm moving on to the next thing. It really is like, I can't really say, like, would I have been able to do that if I hadn't been practicing tantric yoga techniques, and if I hadn't been really working my own Pluto mysteries? Like, I don't know if I would have been able to do that, because there was sometimes that it's like so much depth that I just want to cry, and I don't want to do anything anymore. I can't deal with it anymore. There's that feeling comes up, but at the same time, I knew I was in the Pluto cycle. So therefore, I'm like, I'm going to meet you. And it's meeting myself. And it's like almost bringing my inner everything, I was going to say inner child, bringing that up and being like, we got this, we can do this. And just keep on taking that next step, taking the next phone call, and being fully present with everything that's happening. So I think that would be the thing, like, we know that these things are parts of life, and each of these planets represent a different part of our psyche and a different part of material that in life that's going to come up. And if we know that, then we're able to, like, by the feel of what's happening in life, and somebody will come to you and tell you a little snippet of what's going on, and you're like, oh, I bet they're having a Saturn transit, or I bet they're in a Pluto transit.
Yep.
So then you're able to be like, all right, go in, get down in there, do your work. If it's Saturn, and you're able to, like, pay all your bills, make sure that your contracts are on point. If it's Pluto, it's make sure that you're connecting with what you feel, you're intimate with your emotions, and you're taking care of your body, and you're doing, I find Tantra to be the practices of the philosophy, and I call it inner yoga. It's like getting into a mental posture, and then bringing your